Next, I would like to invite Dr. Rajesh Bhatt, interventional cardiologist, KMC. He will be speaking on the topic myocardial infarction. Dr. Rajesh Bhatt.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think after one line, thank you to Dr. Prabhakar and his team for calling me, and also to Narsim for making my job easy. I'll be talking about the ECGs in myocardial infarction. It's very important, even with the technological advances in the cardiology in probably last century and last decade or so, the ECG still remains the cornerstone of diagnosis of a life-threatening situation such as an MI, myocardial infarction. It is easy, it can be done at the bedside, it doesn't require very highly trained technical staff, and it's very cheap. So I think everybody who is involved in the care of a patient with an acute MI, not only the medical personnel, including the paramedical staff, should know to identify an MI so that the proper bells are rung. We all know for ST, when I say myocardial infarction, I am sticking and restricting myself to ST elevation MI. Narsim has given an elaborate talk on NSTMI and unstable angina. The criteria for calling an ST elevation MI, we all know, is a J point elevation in two contiguous leads with a cutoff of 0.2 millivolts in men or 0.15 millivolts in women in lead V2 to V3 and or 0.1 millivolts in other leads. This comes up to the diagnosis, how we diagnose MI. So I'll be just talking about the various changes in various phases of MI. We have the infarcting phase, in which is subdivided into hyperacute phase and acute phase, then the healing phase and the chronic phase. The hyperacute phase, which we see, is critically important to be identified. It's usually missed, or it is misdiagnosed most of the time. Other T waves are diagnosed as hyperacute stages. The importance of this point is because of two reasons. Number one, this is a point when which patient can go for ventricular fibrillation and have a sudden cardiac death. So it's very important to pick it up. Second point, from the therapeutic point of view, at this phase, both thrombolytic therapy or a PCI have an equal result, with which we call it as a golden hour in an MI, that is the first hour. What are the changes? If we see here, first is the ventricular activation time, the beginning of the QRS complex to the peak of the R wave. It will be the duration will increase. And somebody asked the question, the widened QRST, is it a sign of ischemia? I think this answers your question. The increased VAT, that's the ventricular activation time, and the increased amplitude of the R wave. These 2 points should not be missed. These 2 points are due to the slowness of conduction in the what we say injured myocardium, not infarcted myocardium. Injured myocardium is slow, which the opposing forces have already died out. So we have an increased ventricular activation time due to the slow conduction and an increased amplitude of R wave. Slope elevation of ST segment, you can see here there is some ST segment here, and tall widened T waves. We should not mistake with the tall peaked narrow based hyperkalemic T waves. This is a tall widened T waves which can be seen in the hyperacute phase. This hyperacute phase stays for about an hour or two, that's all, and later it goes to the acute phase, which we all see, which can last for about 6 to 8 hours, in which we have that classical MI ST elevation MI, in which we see the ST elevation which we see here in this ECG leads, the ST elevation and the reciprocal depression in the other leads. This is called as acute phase, in which we will have to intervene either pharmacologically or the PCI, depending on the clinical situation and availability. Third is the healing phase. After say 8 to 12 hours, when the infarction is complete, there was no treatment, the vessel is blocked, the myocardium is dying, which non-salvageable or partially salvageable. Here we see the ST elevation returning to the baseline, in which if you see this ST elevation is high, going up. In this phase, it is coming down to the baseline. Q wave starts appearing here. That shows a dead myocardium and a deep T wave inversion here. This is a healing phase. Third is a chronic phase, in we see most of the patient had a history of MI few months back, few years back. The scar has healed, patient has survived in spite of you or in spite of me, and the ECG has shown, and a surgeon or somebody sends it for you for opinion. Here we see a ST elevation which has almost returned to normal, which is QS pattern, there is no R because the myocardium is dead, there is no excitable tissue, only a scar is there which is having no electrical activity, so a big Q is there, and the T wave may be inverted or upright. This is what we call as an healed MI. These are the ECG changes in the phases of MI. So this cartoon shows that phases in which from normal to ischemia, which Dr. Narsim showed, the ST elevation, T wave inversion, and here the full-blown ST elevation, then the healing phases which are seen here. Then coming to the MI ECG in LBBB. What happens this MI ECG in LBBB? We all know LBBB, left bundle branch block, it interferes with the QRS conduction, hence we have a diagnostic dilemma. So is all LBBs MI? No. If the patient has typical symptoms of MI, he's got the risk factors, then he has a new onset LBBB. If he has a ECG previously done which is normal and now the ECG done shows LBBB, probably he has an MI. So how do you diagnose an MI in LBBB? There is a Garbosa criteria which he has given 3 criteria and the points are given. Number 1 is ST elevation more than 1 millimeter in a lead with the upward concordant QRS complex. This has 5 points, and ST depression more than 1 millimeters in lead V1, V2, V3, which is given 3 points. ST elevation more than 5 millimeters in a lead with downward discordant complex, 2 points. If the patient has more than 3 points, there is a 90% specificity of an ST EMI. Just to show the difference between LBBB with MI and normal LBBB without MI. You see here, this is an LBBB QRS pattern, both are same, but here the T wave is upright, ST is elevated, here the T wave is inverted. Here, if you have a discordant QRS and ST segment, you have a QRS here and the ST elevation is almost 2.5 millimeters here. Here the ST elevation is not much. So this is how you differentiate LBBB, new onset LBBB. I keep on stressing a new onset LBBB in acute MI. In chronic MI, in a chronic LBBB, diagnosing MI is little difficult. So next, coming to the localization of MI, which my colleague has already talked, Narsim has already talked elaborately, which I'll skip for the want of time. And this chart shows the same thing in which extensive anterior, sorry? Yeah. This show the where area which we have seen, which we have to see, in which Narsim has shown you already one AVL, V5, V6 shows the lateral wall, the inferior wall is shown by 2, 3 AVF, and anteroseptal is by V1 to V4. I think this makes very simplified the where we have to see for the ischemic changes. No, I'll come to that, sir. I think I'll once we finish, I'll come to that. V1, V2 stands for the anterior anteroseptal, which I am talking here. I'll come to that. Extensive anterior wall shows 1 AVL and V1 to V6. Anteroseptal V1 to V4. Anterolateral has my colleague Narsim already told. High lateral is 1 AVL V4 to V6. Apical or low lateral V5 to V6, and inferior is 2, 3 AVF. So once we have known, well, is this so easy? Am I diagnosing? Well, it's not so. Sometimes we might miss certain things. Something called posterior wall MI, which a doctor has already talked, and the right ventricular MI. Posterior wall MI, as my colleague was telling, ECG changes are seen in precordial leads V1 to V3, but are the mirror images. When I said the previous slide, anteroseptal, you have a classical Q wave with the ST elevation. Here you have a mirror image, ulta. You can see it from you have a tall R wave, you see a pathological R wave, which signifies a Q wave in an septal MI, which is a mirror image. And RS ratio, which is normally, as my friend said, R is a small r in a V1, V2 normally. Here posterior will have R by S ratio more than 1. So you have a tall R wave signifying a mirror image of a Q wave. And a hyperacute ST changes in which ST depression V1 to V3, that is ST will be depressed on the contrary to the ST elevation in a septal MI. And upright T wave, which shows which is a mirror image of inverted T waves. True posterior MI is often and almost always associated with the inferior wall MI. So when you have a patient with inferior wall MI, and unexplained hemodynamic collapse, always look for this true posterior MI. This ECG shows that, which I showed. I'll show it again. This is a tall R wave in V1, V2, which is a mirror image of a Q wave on an anteroseptal MI. Then you have a ST depression here, which you have a, if you invert it, it would have been a ST elevation of a septal MI, and a T wave upright here, which is again a mirror image of an inverted T wave of a septal MI. This you can see is associated with ST elevation 2-3 AVF, an invariable association with an inferior wall MI. That's a true posterior wall MI, and as doctors pointed out, it is a misnomer because there is no true posterior in a cardiac. If you ask an anatomist, he would don't agree with me because there is no true posterior in the cardia. This is just ECG normal, and I don't know how it has come into picture, but it serves a purpose very well. Coming to the second, right ventricular MI, and it is seen only with the proximal right coronary occlusion, and of course, it's a continuum of an inferior wall MI. ECG findings require additional leads in the chest, V1 to V6 on the right side to diagnose. ST segment elevation in V3R, V6R indicative of a right ventricular injury, and ST elevation of more than 1 millimeter in V4R, which is supposed to be specific for a RV MI. And of course, it is associated with a classic inferior wall MI. I'll just show this cartoon here, in which leads are kept on the right side. The same position on the right side. You see here, V1R, V2R, see the ST elevation in V4R. It's more than 1 millimeter. So you have a diagnosis of a right ventricular MI. Why should we diagnose right ventricular MI in inferior wall MI? If we have a classical inferior wall MI here, why bother about right ventricular MI? Because isolated inferior wall MI, the mortality is less, morbidity is less. But if it is associated with the right ventricular MI, the mortality jumps to 55 to 60%. It's a very high mortality rate, and the management differs. Management differs in the sense we'll have to, if the patient has shock and if the patient is hemodynamically compromised, we might have to give him IV fluids rather than inotropes. Inotropes might kill this patient, leading to, because he's already a big ischemic zone. And if you give the inotropes, it might land up into arrhythmias and kill him. Whereas the treatment of choice, you load him with fluids, increase the blood pressure, increase the right ventricular preload, and bring the blood pressure to normal. So this is what I have talked about. The ECG has a diagnosis. But will ECG serve as a prognostic guide in MI? Yes, it does. If we have an extensive infarction, say a big anterior wall infarction, 1 AVL, V1 to V6, the prognosis is very bad. Multiple infarctions, patient has an old inferior, he was all right, suddenly he comes with one more chest pain, you diagnose an anterior wall MI, again, the prognosis is not very rosy. Bundle branch box, patient has LBBB, RBBB, the prognosis is not good, but LBBB has got a worse prognosis than an RBBB. Ventricular rhythm, my colleague Yusuf talked already about the ventricular rhythm. If the patient has ventricular PVCs, then the prognosis is very not good. The more the number of PVCs, if they occur in bigeminal rhythm, couplets, triplets, the worse is the prognosis. AV blocks, we all know inferior wall can be associated with AV blocks. It can revert on its own or might require a pacemaker for some time and reverts on its own. But a AV block occurring with an anterior wall has got an ominous sign because it almost always signifies the death of the bundle of His and AV node. Of course, anterior wall infarction is again got ominous sign. You can see this ECG here. I think most of us who have done MDs earlier will remember it was our professors to show these ECGs and show it as a C. This ECG has got a tombstone appearance. That means the sign is ominous. But in nowadays, for an interventional cardiologist, it looks like an inflated balloon. This candidate is for percutaneous intervention, and you take him to the lab and salvage him. So these are some of the scores which I just want to mention, and I don't want to go in detail. This is for connoisseurs of ECG, might be like Dr. JP or Lokhandwala who comes tomorrow. They might be knowing this. These are the scores. Aldrich score, which gives us the extent of MI. Anderson-Wilkins score gives us the acuteness of MI. And Sklarowski-Birnbaum grade gives us the severity of MI. People who are interested can read it in Marriott's textbook of cardiology. So sometimes, most of the time, we get an ECG from general practitioners or surgeons or most of the time anesthetists. QAVIN 3, kindly evaluate. So QAVIN lead 3, what is the significance? Is suggestive of an inferior wall MI only if it is associated and the Q is at least one small square, that is 0.04 seconds. If it's associated with a Q of at least 0.20 seconds in AVF, or Q of any duration in lead 2, or R in lead 3 must be must be at least 5 millimeters unless the Q is more than 2.5 millimeters. And very important is upright PV in lead 3, because sometimes some arrhythmias, atrial arrhythmias can lead to a Q in lead 3 with an inverted P waves. If you have that, it's most of the time it's not a infarction, but it's an arrhythmia which has to be investigated. So apart from this classical signs of MI, there are some certain subtle signs which might not occur in many patients, but this has to be kept in mind to diagnose an MI. Those are poor R wave progression, RS changes in the precordial leads, acute frontal axis right axis deviation, a new left axis deviation LBB which I have already touched, or an initial or terminal QRS notching. This might be the subtle signs of MI which might be missed in a casual reading of an ECG. So the caveats in this ECG diagnosis of myocardial infarction: MI might not lead to ST elevation in all conditions, like LCX occlusion, in which I showed the posterior wall, there is no ST elevation, there is an ST depression, and still it's a myocardial infarction. Not all ST elevations are due to MI, because there are differential diagnoses. For want of time, I'm not going to touch it. That is early repolarization syndrome, WPW syndrome, or connective tissue diseases, or many conditions in which there are pericarditis, all where this ST elevation might be there, but they are not all MI. Old LBVB limits the usefulness of ECG in AMI. So with this, I thank you for the patient hearing.
I now request Dr. H. Prabhakar, Chief Interventional Cardiologist, FMMC, to hand over a certificate of appreciation to Dr.